So again, thank you guys and welcome to Awkwardly Zen. And I am going to introduce our lovely speaker for tonight, Robin. Robin has been with Awkwardly Zen for a long time now, and I'm super excited to have her teach with us again tonight. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Robin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming here and being with me tonight. This class is a big deal for me because I'm teaching on what I call the subconscious jar, which is about how spirit works with us to uncover what we truly deeply want on the inside. And normally I'm teaching on like a topic like eclipses and astrology. We've got an upcoming class on the Normand cards. And I found myself extra nervous today because somehow I'm like used to being able to hide behind my authentic expertise on the knowledge of eclipses or whatever. And today I'm really just sharing like from my heart, from my experience, what I've seen working in my own spiritual path and then working with lots of clients. And because I could use a little calming down, and I think grounding is good in general, I would like to invite you guys to start with a little bit of settling in, centering, grounding, however you like to say that, just to get our energies really focused in a good place and set our intentions that we'll all walk away with something that really is helpful for us here. So I'm going to close my eyes, and if you would like to do the same, you're welcome to. Take a couple nice deep belly breaths. Feel any tension from your day, from the fact that you're teaching a class, from the fact that you have a to-do list in your mind, from any interpersonal interactions that have happened to you on the way here. Let's just let that all slip away. If you think you might need any of those concerns after this class is over, you can put a little metaphorical basket by your feet and pick those back up at the end. But for the moment, you can ground or center however works for you. If you want to let your energy slide down into the earth, release toxins for our nurturing earth to recycle, feel like the energy is like grass growing down or roots growing down into the earth. If you want to just relax your guard that you might have from your day and let your energy ride out to the horizon or go out into the trees or the rocks or the plants or the river outside. You might want to ground and center in your heart. Place your hand on your heart. Tell your inner self, I love you. Thank you for being my best friend. Thank you for always being my biggest supporter. And you might also want to let some energy go up through the top of your head, out into the cosmos, to the sun or moon, to the stars, to any planet or area of our galaxy that really calls to you. Or if you're like me, you might be doing all of the above. I call that 360-degree grounding and centering. I want to be connected and grounded to as many positive energies as I can. And as we settle into that, I'm going to set my intention, and I'd like you guys to set an intention if you would like to. You can glom onto mine, or you can set your own. What are you hoping to get out of this event? What brought you here tonight? Thank you for those of you who are my friends and supporters and came for me. I really appreciate that. But beyond that, where's that area in your life that's calling for growth or change or knowledge or hungering for something? And as the presenter, I'm going to set the intention that every person here walks away with something concrete for their own highest good. A new thought, plan of action, realization, a mind shift, something that you're like, wow, I'm thinking about this differently. I'm going to be doing this differently. I never realized that. I never realized I could do it that way. And that we'll all leave with something for our own good, and that we won't leave for anything that wasn't for our highest good. So if what I said doesn't resonate with you, feel free to ignore it or react against it and find what does. If somebody shares something and you're like, wow, their energy didn't feel great, feel free to leave that behind. You're not responsible for fixing anybody, taking anybody's energy with you. No cords need to be taken. We'll set our intention that this is a safe space to be open and share and let spirit speak to us, let our own spirit speak to us, and that we can go away feeling enlightened, refreshed, full of joy, challenged in a positive sort of way, and with plenty of good stuff to tide us over through the rest of our week and into the weekend. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Ari for starting Awkwardly Zen, and to Valerie, who promoted this with Tarot Unicorns and Coffee, and all you guys for coming. And also a thank you to Spirit and any spiritual energies that are here with us, creating this positive environment. If you got your guides, your ancestors, divine connection, your higher self is showing up. Thank you to everybody in the metaphysical world who's here to help us have a great evening. We'll just take a couple more deep breaths and give you a moment to set your own intention if you want something specific out of this. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'll get started again. Okay, all right. Shake it out, roll your neck, settle yourself in, grab your happy beverage. I'm drinking tea, whatever people are drinking. All right, so I want to let you guys know that I am very open as a speaker and presenter to whatever questions, whatever thoughts you might have. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit. I have some slides, and then I'll stop and say, does anybody have any questions? If you're confused, please feel free to put your question in the chat and Ari will interrupt me and ask the question. But oftentimes, you know, if you're confused about something, you're probably not the only one. So please don't be shy about asking questions. I tutored teenagers for 20 years for the SAT. And what I've learned is that it's good when people have questions. It's good when people are engaged. It's good when people are like, can you clarify that? And so you're not going to offend me by interrupting or by having questions. But at the same time, I do want to say, and I'll repeat this, but I do want to say that, you know, Spirit's interaction with everybody is unique, which is part of what this class is about. And so it may be that what I say from my perspective isn't your perspective on Spirit. And maybe it will be. Maybe 2 years from now, you're like, man, I thought Robin was totally wrong about this, but now it's happening to me. Or maybe you're just on a different path. And so if something doesn't resonate with you, you can just ignore it. I'm fine with that. But you might ask yourself, what about that rubbed me the wrong way? What didn't I like about the way she said that? Or it seemed perfectly reasonable, but I just wasn't excited about it. Because that may be Spirit nudging you to dive deeper into what does resonate, into what you do want. So if you love what I say, that's amazing. And I'm always up for positive feedback. But if you don't love it, that also can be just as helpful, because reacting against it can help you figure out what you want to know. All right, and I'm super grateful to you guys for being here. If you need to leave early, that's no problem. The replay of this will be up on the Awkwardly Zen site, and then you can watch the rest of it if you want to. And you're always welcome to email me, by the way, after the fact. I'm going to give you my email at the end. I think Ari's put it in the chat. If you have any questions that you are like, I didn't want to ask this in the group, but it's important to me, I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. And then the last thing is that my internet connection is no good. We have a lovely day here on the coast in Seaside, so I think our internet is going to be fine. But if I do freeze for like 30 seconds, just wait. I'll be right back. And then Ari will interrupt me and let me know where you lost me, and I'll back right up. I don't think that's going to happen, but it does occasionally. All right, can everybody see my screen here? Are we good? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes, and everybody can hear me okay? If you can't hear me, somebody should interrupt me and say so. All right, so I titled this lesson, The Subconscious Jar, Capturing Spirit's Guidance, because I really wanted to talk about how great it is to work with Spirit, but also how challenging it can be. I think there's a lot of people out there who talk about how amazing it is to work with angels and how much we love our spirit guides. And that's totally true. It's totally true. But working with Spirit can also be really challenging. I've been on the spiritual path for about 25 years. I was in a Christian church. I was raised in a sort of atheist agnostic household, but I was the kind of kid who like talked to trees and believed in fairies and felt like I could feel the ocean breathing. And that was really squashed by my sort of scientific, logical parents. And then I joined a Christian church in college, and I was a Christian in the church for 25 years. And I didn't love it, but I kind of felt I didn't have a choice for various reasons. And then 6 years ago, I had a spiritual awakening. And I started really hearing from Spirit. And I learned that a lot of the stuff that I thought about Spirit leading up to that wasn't really accurate. And that's part of what we're teaching about in the class, is the things I learned about what Spirit is really like. But yeah, it's been a long journey. I've worked with thousands of people on their spiritual journey, and I do astrology and counseling and consulting. So if you have some questions and you think you might want to work with me, please feel free to contact me about that. But what I've discovered is that Spirit's guidance is often kind of nebulous. can feel all over the place. You can feel like it's too specific sometimes and not specific enough the other times. And I put this graphic together because this is actually a picture from the Hubble telescope of a sort of star field in the back. But yet here we are trying to bring this vast spiritual guidance into our bodies, living in Utah or Florida or Oregon or Denver. And it can be a little bit like, okay, there's all this stuff out there to know, but how do I bring that down into my container, my subconscious jar? This is a picture from my back deck, just, sitting on the railing with the river and the tree in the backyard. And it's like, how are we going to actually give all this cosmic guidance, the spirituality into our lives? And so that's a lot of what we're talking about today. I wanted to start with a quote from my husband, who doesn't consider himself to be a spiritual guy, but I think his spirituality comes out a lot in his writing, his creativity. And he said this on a walk to the beach lately. He said, "A one-size-fits-all approach to spirituality is like saying a potato sack is the ideal apparel because it fits over everyone's figure." And I just had to pair that with the famous picture of Marilyn Monroe actually wearing a potato sack. Now, I plan to say some things tonight that might be slightly controversial, and I feel really glad that Ari gave me permission to say things as the teacher. I'm not saying them because I think you have to agree. I'm just saying them because they represent my perspective, and hopefully they'll be thought-provoking. You may be in one of those traditions that says, no, everybody has to be a such and such. Everybody has to follow this traditional path. But if you've been in that tradition for any length of time, you might realize that even within a single traditional path, within Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity, you still have to tailor it to yourself. And that's how Marilyn managed to look so good in this potato sack, is that she tailored it. Now, I'm not sure Marilyn tailored it. She may have had a dressmaker tailored it, but somebody tailored this to be an amazing fit for Marilyn's figure. Somebody picked out the shoes, somebody picked out the bracelet. And there's a whole series of photos of her wearing a potato sack, which are all very interesting. And so I really want to give you permission to tailor your spiritual path to whatever works for you. And, our figures change, right? So maybe Marilyn is perfectly figured for this potato sack, and maybe in 2 years, it doesn't fit her anymore because she's gained weight or lost weight or her style has changed. So I want to introduce the idea that we are continually tailoring our experience with spirit, and that in fact, spirit is continually tailoring our experience with spirit, which is partly why we struggle, because we kind of get in a groove and we want it to be a certain way. And then spirit's like, okay, now it's time for something new. And it's like, but I thought this was the right way, but I liked that way, but I felt comfortable with this way, but my family accepted this way. So you have to get used to this sort of ongoing process of tailoring it to yourself and also experiencing the tailoring that spirit is trying to give you. All right, so, oops, that didn't work. Sorry, I have a small error in my thing. This is one of these things where it was supposed to, there's a show me stage. Okay, let's try this again. Sorry about that. Okay, are there any questions so far, Ari? Okay.
Nope, you're good.
All right, good. So here's the thing. This is, yes, a picture of me with President Obama, believe it or not.
So you stop sharing, Robin, if you want to add that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure. Catch you back.
I really appreciate that. Okay. I didn't mean to stop. Oh, maybe I stopped sharing because I meant to stop the slideshow instead. Okay. Right. Are we back?
It's coming right now. There you go.
Okay, good. All right. So yes, this is a picture of me with President Obama. This is 8 years ago when he actually was the president. Interestingly, we were in the green room at the White House and not the Oval Office, but when they sent us a copy of the picture, they photoshopped the Oval Office into the background. But Obama is actually real. But the point really isn't Obama. The point is my mom and then me. So my mom, this is mom right here, and she is a famous scientist. If you Google her, her name is Sandra Faber. She was involved in the Hubble telescope. There's a whole Wikipedia page about everything she's done. Here she is winning the National Medal of Science at the White House. That's the medal around her neck. That's Dad next to her on the left, and then my husband, Steve, on the right side of Obama next to me. And for a long time, what I thought I wanted was to be like Mom. Who wouldn't want to be like Mom? She's got this amazing science career. She's got, things named after her in her field of astronomy and astrophysics. She goes all over the world consulting. She's consulting with the Chinese on their telescope programs. She's got a family. She's got a good marriage. Like, I really thought that I needed that scientific career where I could be really well known. And the funny thing is that in going to the White House, I didn't even trust myself enough to go shopping for my own outfit. And I brought somebody with me who had all these ideas. She's kind of a fashionista about what I should wear. And I wanted to wear pants, but she wanted me to wear a skirt because you can't wear pants to the White House. And so I ended up in this outfit here. And I am not criticizing this outfit at all, but I didn't notice until I started putting a presentation together about 2 months ago that I had ended up dressed exactly like Mom. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, Mom, I didn't know what Mom was going to wear. She lives in California and I was in North Carolina. But somehow this desire to be like Mom had translated even into the clothes that we picked out, or that I let my friend pick out for me for this event. And I just had to realize at some point that trying to be like Mom was not the direction that Spirit wanted me to go in. And there's a great C.S. Lewis quote. And I've paraphrased it here. It's a long quote, but basically it says, we get involved with Spirit when we think we have a little problem. Our gutter's leaky, our roof needs fixing, our drain doesn't work. And you invite Spirit into your life thinking you're going to have a few changes made. And C.S. Lewis's quote is, you thought you were being built into a decent little cottage. But then you discover that Spirit's vision is so much bigger than that. And what he said is, you discover that Spirit is building a palace. And so I really thought that Spirit was going to help me be more like Mom, help me get my life together, help me get a career, help me stop being so weird, help me fit in better. And that was not at all what Spirit had in mind. And what Spirit had in mind was to help me embrace my own internal truth. And 7 years later, I ended up with this photo, which you can see is not like Mom at all, but is much more of me. Oh my gosh, bald eagle just flew by my window. Wow, that was pretty amazing. Thank you, Spirit. I appreciate the sign of the bald eagle flying by my window. But you can see that this is me channeling my inner self much more feminine, much less hidden, much less stiff, much more internal. And so this is the thing I want you guys to think about is, to what degree are you perhaps subtly hoping that Spirit will simply make you into a better version of what you think you should be? Fix up your drains, unclog your gutters, straighten up your cottage, maybe give you a new coat of paint. And to what degree is there maybe something inside of you that wants to come out? Some internal truth that Spirit is like, we're fanning something much bigger into flame in this. And so we're going to have a few what I call digestion moments, and you'll see what I call them that later. But if you want to do this with me now, you can just take your hand and put it on your heart. Look inside yourself and just say to your inner self, is there a part of the inner me that I'm afraid to let out? I don't want to recognize. I worry this will be hard to live with if I'm honest about my desire to fill in the blank. Or maybe you can ask yourself, has Spirit been nudging me to do something that I kind of been avoiding? Talk to the person who hurt you. Be honest about your deep desires. Think about a career change to something that's better aligned. And if you're willing, you can just say to yourself out loud, I would like to know what that is and understand my own subconscious. It's something that Spirit always says to me, which is it's important to at least be aware of what's inside of you. You don't have to tell anybody if you don't want to, but don't hide from yourself. And if you're not sure what that might be, maybe something's in your mind and you already know what I'm talking about. But if you're not sure what it might be, you can just say, you know what, I'm open if there's something new. If I need to become less rigid, or I need to set better boundaries, or I need to finally get my butt out of this place that's not good for me and find a better place for me. I'm open to whatever that might be. Now, if you're really bold, you can actually put that in the chat as a public statement about how you would like to grow. You don't have to. You could also just write it down on a piece of paper if you want to take some notes. Just to say, what is that thing? And somebody could put in for me in the chat, I want to be more open about my inner divine. Can somebody write that in the chat for me? Robin, be more open about my inner divine. That's really scary for me, which we're going to talk about later. Okay, I'm going to move on. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask so far? We're about to get into the meat of what to do with spirit.
I think we might have a question. Ella, did you have a question? Your hand was up for a second. If so, just unmute yourself. She might have just been agreeing.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I won't take a lot of time, but I think for me, I have allowed and I've done a lot of stuff. But there's like, I feel spirit wants me to do something completely different than what I'm doing. Just to give you an example, the father of the kids took the kids away. And I'm being forced to see the reality of the abuse, the past and now, and I'm being challenged to go against him. And I'm like a 2-year-old digging my heels, not wanting to fight. So I'll just put it out there because I want to be able to, I don't want to fight. I just want my kids.
Would it be okay, Ella, if anybody who is willing here sent you some positive energy for resolving this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so anybody who wants to join me in sending Ella, either now or later, some positive energy. I just want to honor you for sharing and being honest and open. And I cannot count the number of times I've said to spirit, there's no freaking way I'm doing this. I don't want to have to do that. This is a no, this is a hard limit for me. And just even saying that is so helpful because it allows spirit to begin to help you find a way to stand up that works for you. Yeah, I think you're going to make big steps in this. Even just your bravery in sharing it is so great. Thank you so much, Ella, for sharing that. Yeah, I think amazing things are going to happen for you as you figure out how to stand up in a way that is right for you. Yeah. So you may be asking, actually Ella might be asking this question, but maybe some of you guys have asked these questions. And I'll just mention, by the way, I've asked every single one of these with a few choice swear words thrown in myself. So no shame. Why is spirit being so hard on me? Have you ever just said that? Why are you making it so hard? Why is spirit having such high standards? Why doesn't spirit let me settle? Why is spirit causing these problems? Like when I first started hearing from spirit, he said, my spirit guide said, you got to tell your parents about this. And then I did, and then they didn't react well. And I was like, what the heck? I could have just kept it quiet and then they would never have known. And he was like, no, it was really important to be open about this. So sometimes you work with spirit and you're like, spirit's making this worse, man. Right? Or not giving me, FIB is fill in the blank. Why is spirit not giving me the job that I wanted? Not giving me the comfort that I wanted? Not giving me the wisdom that I want? Why is spirit not protecting me from negative energies or people? I put a bubble of golden light around my meditation and I asked spirit to protect me, but I still had a negative energy that I had to deal with. You know, I asked spirit to give me a beautiful place to live and then I moved in and now my neighbors are hassling me. Why isn't spirit giving me guidance? Why isn't spirit telling me what to do? Why is spirit allowing me to make these mistakes? That's a big one for me. I'm like, you guys knew this wasn't going to work out well. Why didn't you tell me to stop doing it? We have a lot of ideas about what spirit should be doing. And if you're asking these questions, there may be some part of you that says, spirit shouldn't be hard on me. Spirit should protect me from negative energies. Spirit should give me guidance. Spirit should prevent me from making mistakes. Spirit should give me my kids without making me have to stand up, you know? Because a lot of us have ideas about spirit that involve like, spirit's going to make my life easier. Spirit's going to fix my problems. And what I discovered is that that's not really spirit's role. This is the joy and pain of co-creation, right? Deep transformation occurs when you embrace spirit helping you create what you really want, not what you think you want, which might be an easy, comfortable life where you don't make any mistakes, or you always get guidance, so you always know what to do. It's a relationship. It's not a vending machine. If you've ever had the thought of like, well, I have to get all the details of this ritual right, so spirit will give me what I want. Or you ever thought, well, I was a good girl. I did everything I was supposed to do, so shouldn't spirit reward me? Then it's kind of like you get into this mode where you're like, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and spirit will respond with X, Y, Z, like a vending machine. Like, I put my dollar in, where's my can of Coke? You know, spirit is going to give you what you really need. And it's not just what you think you want. I thought I wanted a career so I could be like my mom and everybody would respect me and I would have a nice income, and everywhere I went, people would say, oh, Robin, you're such an amazing such and such. Like, I really thought that that's what I wanted. Spirit is like, oh, it's not your plan on this planet. Then I became an astrologer, and I can see in my astrology chart, I don't have the chart for somebody who has a career like that. Spirit is going to bring up trauma and limitations so that you can heal them. Spirit isn't going to paper things over so that you can go on with your happy life and ignore all the problems you're having. Like, when I started working with spirit, I discovered I'd been misdiagnosed with a mental health disorder for 20 years, and I'd been on 14 different medications for nothing. And it was really just an excess of spiritual energy, but back then nobody knew that. I discovered I had sexual abuse experiences as a kid that I had totally repressed because of the medication. And they all came back up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt so much more broken than I had before. You know, I lost my ability to do my old job. I lost my ability to live in my old house. My family relationships have changed, and they're better in some ways, but they're more challenging in others. So when you dive into the idea that you're really co-creating with spirit, spirit's not a vending machine that you just get what you want, you know, or create an easy life, that it's a relationship where you give to spirit, but you also accept what spirit wants to give to you, even if it's not the most painful, not the most pleasant experience. That's when that deep transformation occurs. All right, maybe I feel like I really didn't want to lose my career because I wanted to be in that field for 25 years so that everybody could say how great I was and I could be a national expert. But spirit knew that that was not the field for me. That was the equivalent of the little cottage dream where I'd be an expert on SAT tutoring. The palace dream is getting in touch with my inner divine, just for my example. So if you want to take a moment, we can have another digestion moment here and put your hand on your chest and ask, what do I really want? Not just what would be easy or safe or nice. What do I think I really want? I really want to feel amazing about myself instead of just hiding and presenting a facade I think people will accept. I really want a job that lights me up instead of just something that pays the bills. I really want to feel like I'm a good person, even if other people disagree with me. Because this is what spirit has told me about honesty, which is it's the foundation of everything. And we're going to have a few like spirit on things today. But being honest about how you really feel, what you really want, what your heart really desires. If you're really angry or despairing or upset or any of those things, that is the foundation. And spirit likes to say to me that in order to heal it, you have to reveal it. If you don't reveal it, you can't heal it. That's what I said. I'm like, why did you bring up this sexual abuse? Why didn't you just let me keep that buried? And spirit was like, if you want to heal it, you have to reveal it. So being honest about what you really want. And actually at the end, I'm going to give you guys an exercise to help you figure this out. And how you really feel about what spirit is doing is the foundation of a real relationship. It's like a marriage, right? We always say marriage depends on communication. Any questions so far?
Yes, Victoria has a question. Victoria, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, Robin. What you were saying about when spirit gives you guidance and it's not always what you want, because I have found that in my journey with spirit is when I ask spirit to, open me to take in what it needs me to do, and it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
And it's not always, but it's always for the benefit. Like what you were saying, like it opens up parts of you that, like when you said you had to find out about your childhood and all that stuff, it makes you open up, and it's kind of like shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody likes to do it, but it has to be done.
So I'll just tell you that there is one entity that loves shadow work, and that's spirit.
Yes,
Spirit
yes.
loves shadow.
It's always about digging in there and getting it out.
Right.
No matter how much
That's
we
right.
want to hide it.
It's very true. Spirit said to me, they're like, what would you do if you, like, you know, let's say your kid is riding her bicycle down the street and she falls and scrapes her knee, and her knee's like all full of gravel. And you went to the doctor, and the doctor just put a Band-Aid over it and said, it's all better. Right? You would never accept that. You would say, what about, aren't you going to dig out the gravel? Aren't you going to clean out the wound? Aren't you going to make sure that there's not, like, you know, rocks and dirt and stuff to cause infection? Spirit is like, you want me to clean out this wound. It's really going to hurt, but boy, it's going to heal so much better afterwards, because you opened up and let me clean out what was going on inside. Yep. Cool. All right. Any other questions or comments before I move on?
Nope, I don't see any.
I really appreciate you guys sharing. And one thing that this shows you, which is partly why I wanted to do this, is to just show you, you know, we're not alone. Spirit has similar experiences. We all have had the, I love spirit, I hate spirit, like right next to each other. You know, we all are going through this on this planet together. Okay, so spirit on discomfort. And this is what spirit said to me. On this planet, discomfort is a teacher. It is something to learn from, work through, and leave behind. And this is important because if you are a very empathetic person, a very sensitive person, or you have any sort of star seed elements where maybe parts of you are from planetary systems where everybody lives in harmony and discord is frowned upon, it's easy to feel like discomfort is a sign that you're doing something wrong. Or if you make somebody else feel uncomfortable, you make them mad, you make them sad, you hurt their feelings, then that to feel like, oh no, now I'm a bad person because I've caused trouble for this other person. Or well, this is really uncomfortable for me, and I know that, you know, spirit is all about joy and peace, so I must be messing this up somehow. And obviously we have to take responsibility. It's not a good idea to randomly go around hurting people's feelings for no reason. It's not a good idea to make other people uncomfortable, like just for fun. But if you're experiencing discomfort, if you do something from spirit's perspective, like you follow the guidance you got and it doesn't work out comfortably, it doesn't mean you messed it up. And sometimes when you have made somebody else uncomfortable, even if, you know, if you can go back and say, okay, I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't cross any lines, my intentions were good, that may be that they need the teacher of discomfort for them. So you want to learn from it. And if you want to change your behavior next time you can, you want to work through it. And then you are supported by spirit to leave that discomfort behind. You don't have to wallow in the pain. You don't have to keep telling yourself that you have to remember how bad you were so you don't make mistakes again. It's not something to be ashamed of or feel guilty about. It doesn't make you evil or bad in any sense. But once you've gotten what you need to get out of it, you are empowered to move forward. Okay, so here's the question. What would happen to you? Now we're getting into the kind of like nitty-gritty tips for working with spirit. So what would happen to you if you ate a breakfast? Here's my delicious oatmeal breakfast. Ate a breakfast of oatmeal, and then you had a couple pieces of pizza, maybe for lunch. This is my husband's pizza for lunch. And then you had dinner. This is quiche, salad, and taquitos. And then maybe even a little bit of dessert, like some brownies, and you never digested any of it. It just sat in your stomach and it just sat there. And then the next day you got up and did the same thing. You ate another breakfast, another lunch, another dinner, maybe a few more treats or snacks, but you never really digested it. What would happen to your digestive system? Yeah, not so awesome, right? So what we know is that it's really important to digest what you consume. Now, the human body has 4 basic steps for this, right? You eat whatever nourishes you. Most humans spend about an hour and a half eating every day. I mean, people vary obviously, but something like that, 3 meals, let's say. Then your body has to break down whatever you ate into its component nutrients, right? Minerals, vitamins, fiber, protein, whatever. Then your body has to absorb whatever the nutrients were and and use them in your body for action, right? To power your muscles, for insight, to power your brain, your circulation system. It's not enough to just eat. You got to break down the nutrients, you got to absorb them. And then step 4, anybody who's been constipated knows it's really important to release what you don't need. You can't keep everything that you've eaten. You've got to let some of it go. And some of it is waste products that you never could use in the first place, that you were not digestible. And others are the waste products of the process of using your muscles and things like that, which produces waste products. But there's all kinds of stuff that you got to get rid of regularly. And I looked up on the internet. It turns out that compared to the hour and a half that you spend eating a day's food, most people, most bodies spend somewhere between 48 and 120 hours on these 3 other steps: breaking down nutrients, absorbing them and using them, and then releasing what you don't need. So whatever you eat, essentially, and then you don't need any of it, it comes out somewhere between 2 and 5 days later. And I wanted, this is a slide, by the way, that came to me in my dreams. I dream about these slide presentations. So Spirit really wanted me to talk about this, because a lot of us run into trouble with Spirit because we are stuck on step 1. We're constantly consuming Spirit's messages. We're out there looking for signs, we meditate, we do tarot readings, we listen to sermons, we come to stuff like this, right? Where you listen to experts talking. And we have this idea that somehow if we just keep taking in more messages, somehow something will magically change for us. I'm going to find the right message. I'm going to find the right teacher. I'm going to find the right guru. I'll do the right tarot reading. And what I found is that that really doesn't work, because it's not eating that nourishes you. It's all these other 3 steps: breaking down the nutrients, absorbing them for action, insight, and then the key step of releasing what you don't need. So you can just take a moment and ask yourself here, is there any one of these steps that I feel like I could be really doing better with Spirit? Maybe you spend a lot of time consuming, and you spend a lot of time on step 2, breaking things down and thinking about it, but you don't actually act very much. Or maybe you need more of step 4. You're like, well, Spirit keeps telling me to change, but I'm not doing so well with releasing my old ways of being. I'm adding lessons from Spirit, but I'm not actually letting go of the old stuff I used to be doing, right? Take a moment and you can put in the chat if you've got a number. I am working on number 4. Somebody can put number 4 in next to my name in the chat. I definitely need more work on releasing. So any of these areas that call to you, maybe you have a feeling of bloatedness in your stomach and you're like, wow, I really got to absorb more of this. We're going to go through these steps in a little more detail. Okay. People ask me, how do I hear from Spirit more? So maybe you need to consume more. So I got a bunch of do's and don'ts. Don't idolize Spirit's experts or authority figures to the extreme. Now, respecting Spirit is great. Listening to experts is good, but it's not Spirit's life or the expert's life, it's your life. So instead, I recommend that you ask Spirit and your inner self for help, because this is really about your relationship with you. So don't just be like following gurus or using other people's tarot spreads all the time. Really go inward and figure out what you need to hear from Spirit and how you can implement what you hear. Okay, don't prioritize paranormal or like information over IPL as in the physical life, over physical life or action. A lot of times people are like, oh, well, if I just would hear a voice from an angel, or if I could just get my clairs online, then I would figure this out. But it's much more important to have a really wide range of communication from Spirit that you'll experience. Intuition, other people, pop culture, earworms. Those are the songs that get stuck in your head. Spirit speaks to me a lot through earworms. Bus billboards, like license plates, synchronicities. Don't just decide, oh, well, I'm really working on dreams. I mean, I support you in working on your dreams, but don't just ignore other stuff. Like be open to lots of ways to get communication from Spirit. Don't insist only on familiar or comfortable sources. So you might be like, well, I come from a tradition where we listen to angels, so I'm only accepting it if an angel talks to me. My advice is, if you want to hear from Spirit more, Spirit may be helping you branch out. So research other cultures and belief systems. You may find that, divination or throwing bones or taking a walk in a natural place or reading a book and asking yourself how you can imitate the main character. Like, really don't just say, well, I'm only going to accept it if it comes in this one way. This is really big. Like, how many times maybe you've done this or you've heard of people doing it where they're like, oh, I did a tarot reading, but I didn't like the message, so I put all the cards away, right? We already had a comment today about how it's not always the guidance that you want. It's very tempting to use spirit as that vending machine where you're like, well, I don't like that message. It was confusing. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. And then you just like ignore it or decide you're going to find somebody to tell you what you want to hear. It's just not very respectful. And if you want to hear from spirit more, they may say something to you like, well, I already told you that last thing and you didn't believe me or listen to it. So I'm not going to tell you anything else until you clear that last step. So instead, take seriously the messages you do receive and work through any challenges or discomfort. That might be part of the message, is the healing that's needed as a result of the discomfort. Spirit will always support you. You can get love and support. You can find people in the physical world to listen to you. You can email me. It's not like you're on your own with this, but don't just ignore it or like avoid the difficult part of things. And then don't give up if it doesn't happen right away. So you have to really want it. It's a little bit like going to college. You wouldn't walk into the first day of algebra class and be like, wow, this is really confusing. I can never learn algebra, and then just walk away. Expect that you're going to have to put in the work and practice to find the communication channel that works for you. You might have to try multiple ways. You might be really excited about dream communication, but it's just not your thing. And then you start seeing messages on the bus that goes by every day. Like expect that this is something that's going to require some practice, and don't give up, because if you really want it, you'll keep at it. And spirit wants to communicate with you, but there may be some message in the way that the communication is coming through, some requirement for changing or flexibility or something like that. Does anybody have any questions about this slide?
I don't think we have anything on that slide. Just real quick, and maybe you're going to speak to this here in a bit. There's some back and forth in the chat about how when you're trying to do growth and other people aren't coming along with you, or their lives are falling apart, or they turn on you, that kind of thing. Can you maybe touch on that a little bit in your life, Robin?
Yeah, I definitely will. And I think I'd like to do that a couple slides from now. So thank you for letting me know about that. And I've had lots of experience. I've yet to be disowned by my family, which is good, but there's definitely been lots of other things that have happened for sure. So yeah, thanks for putting a bug in my ear about that.
Hey, Robin and Ari, I received a private question and wondered if we could have one of the participants ask it herself.
If she's willing to, I'm fine with that.
I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Nina?
Naina. Sorry,
Naina.
confused on where to send my chat. I'm like, where am I sending this? The earworms, I've never heard of that. And it brought me some comfort because I thought it was my anxiety, where like sometimes I can like wake up, it's just so randomly in the day, I just get this song, part of a song that's just plays over and over and over, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, oh my God, please stop. And when you said that, I've just never heard of that. And so could you like just give a little more information if you don't mind? Like,
yeah, but actually, honestly, I have an example a little bit later in my presentation.
Oh, okay, awesome.
I get so much information from earworms. Like spirit talks to me with earworms all the time. I've discovered that every time a random song is in my head, I always stop and ask, what's the message of this? What am I supposed to learn from this? And it's actually really fun because spirit has a great sense of humor and apparently has a great playlist. There's like stuff, there's classical stuff, there's movie themes, there's all kinds of stuff.
That's so comforting. Okay. And it's so, I love you said that, because my question was, does she have an example of, a time that, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Examples coming. Yeah, for sure.
All right. And also with examples, are you going to talk anything about like body twitches or feeling spirit in that way? Or is there anything you can touch on with that?
Yeah, I definitely can. What's my slide here? Okay. All right. So let me just mention, this is a quick astrology thing, which is that the 9th house in your astrology chart and the position of your natal sun have to do with how spirit's messages come in. So if you're like astrology or you want to do a reading with me, we can take a look. This will give you some idea if you're like, I just don't hear messages from spirit and I'm not sure how they're supposed to come in. So as far as body twitches go and feelings in your body, it depends a little bit on what sort of communication you've established with spirit. So it might be that, like for me, I get body pain a lot when I'm holding on to anxiety. And if I have like random pains, I'll be like, why do I have this pain? And I hear a little voice that says, you're really worried. You're really tense. You're holding on to your fill in the blank, whatever it is. And I know, okay, I need to relax for that. Now, certain body parts are actually associated with certain signs of the zodiac. So like headaches are associated with Aries, and the neck is associated with Taurus, and Gemini is associated with your shoulders. So you actually can Google something called Zodiac Man. That's what it's called. If you're thinking that spirit might be communicating with you from a certain body part, and then giving you some message related to that zodiac sign, that's a possibility. But also it may be that you actually have a physical health problem, right? So don't forget actually going to the doctor and ruling that out. And then for me, I had to do what's called a medieval humor analysis, which I also do for people. So if you want one, I can do that. Although it's not hard to do it. You can just Google medieval humor analysis on the internet. And I discovered that my diet was all wrong for my system. And once I changed my diet, then it wasn't like cutting out carbs or anything. It was like eating different fruits and adding more spices and that sort of thing. That helped a lot of my health problems. But the main thing I would do is, especially if you're having the same body part over and over again, and there doesn't seem to be anything that's actually physically wrong with it, or it's like a twitch, it's not a pain, ask spirit, please help me understand what you are trying to tell me. I need help knowing what this is a sign of. And then do some meditation, ask for a dream, try some journaling, or find somebody you know who has the sight or whatever it is, the spiritual gifts, and say, hey, can you help me talk through this? I feel like spirit's trying to get my attention, but I'm not sure what this is about. Yeah, good question. Okay. Okay, so this is something that's really important to think about when you're talking about who you are on your spiritual path, is to understand the difference between, am I an Orthodox or am I a mystic? And you can switch back and forth, and spirit may switch you from one to the other. The Orthodox stage is the stage of like the homesteader. Safety, skill, comfort. You're mastering known territory. You're honing your current skills. You're utilizing tradition. So if you feel very comfortable within a certain tradition, like I was in the Christian tradition for 20 years, I was in that homesteader mode. I wasn't innovating. I wasn't finding something new. I was just getting good at what I was getting good at. So like, just as an example, if you're a tarot reader and you're like, okay, I'm going to memorize all 78 card meanings, and then I'm going to be a tarot reader and I'm going to give tarot readings. I'm in the tarot reading tradition. And spirit may have you here as a way of kind of consolidating your skills, helping you heal, helping you learn. And it's not that you're not learning, it's just that you're learning in something that other people have already figured out, like tarot or Christianity or whatever. But sometimes spirit wants us to be in the mystic territory. This is the explorer. This is like, the Lewis and Clark expedition. They had a bunch of skills that enabled them to thrive in the forest on the East Coast. But as they got farther and farther west, they started encountering new species, unknown native tribes that had never met any people who spoke English, new weather patterns that they'd never seen before. And this is where you have to discover new things. You got to adapt your current skills. You're creating new curriculum instead of being the old tradition. You're like, wow, this is a new experience I've never had. Maybe I'm reaching a new path here. And so it was really important if spirit gets you to switch. A lot of times switching from homesteader to explorer mode is really uncomfortable, and you can feel like you've lost a lot. Or maybe you love being in explorer mode and now spirit is calling you to really dial into something and get good at something. And you're like, well, this isn't so boring, or I don't feel like I'm so spiritual because now I'm just like, I've been doing this for such a long time. And so knowing that both of these paths are really important, they're both valuable places to be. And being willing to let spirit kind of guide you. You could be in, homesteader mode in one area, but now you're thrust into explorer mode in a new area. Getting the support you need is really important, but it's important to know that both of these are places where spirit can help you thrive. And that especially if you're now healing things that you haven't healed before, or maybe you're like, spirit is like, hey, you're a starseed, and you're like, a what? No, I'm not. I'm not any of that stuff, right? To be able to nurture yourself through both of these states is really important. Okay, spirit on finding your gifts. You are not designed to be every tool in the toolbox. Sharpen and hone the tool that you are and leave the other jobs to other people. Is this your gift? Is it your area of interest? Do you enjoy talking about it? If not, let somebody else work on those issues and find something you do enjoy solving. So we're getting to the next stage, which is the stage of finding clarity on whatever you've heard from Spirit. And it's really important not to be like, oh, well, Eloise over there is amazing at tarot. I should be like Eloise, right? One of the things Spirit wants us all to do is to really understand what we are good at and what brings us joy, and to focus in on that. Okay, so we all have sort of our inner self, right? Our inner child, our higher self, our subconsciousness. But a lot of us have a cognitive shield around that. That's the part of us that's rational and logical and got trained by school. And a lot of times when messages come in from Spirit, it's the part that starts to doubt. Well, is that just a coincidence? Well, is that really what Spirit wants? Well, that doesn't make any sense. You can't be a starseed. You don't even know if aliens even exist. What is your family going to say? What is mom and dad going to say? Those sorts of questions. The questions about what do you do if somebody else isn't coming along with me? And so a big part of, once you've heard Spirit's message, whatever it is, a big part of getting the clarity and insight is really working through that cognitive shield to identify what's going on in your inner self. So discussing it with people who are of like mind, doing some more research on starseeds or whatever it might be, asking for dreams or visions that help clarify, meditation, doing rituals or arts, divination, journaling. This is obviously a short list. What you really want to do is bypass those mental defenses and uncover your deeper instinct, your intuition, your deep beliefs, your desires. What does this message mean for me? How can I act on this? What can I do with it? What obstacles do I need to overcome? What do I need to let go of? Especially if the message is difficult or it's not what you've expected, or I get into that hell no, I won't go stage with Spirit. I'm like, I'm not doing that. There's no freaking way that I'm comfortable with this thing that you've asked me to consider, do, say, or whatever it is. And this is a really great spot to be thinking about how you want to react to those family members or people in your life who are not coming with you. Because sometimes they're like, just like they don't agree, and then you just keep it to yourself. But sometimes they're against you. My family was like, we need you to go see a professional to make sure that you haven't lost your mind. I was like, thanks for the vote of confidence there. But I did go see a professional who agreed that actually I hadn't lost my mind. And she's the one, by the way, who identified that I'd been misdiagnosed with the mental illness and didn't really even have that, which enabled me to get off the medication, which was really great. Sometimes you might, in this thing, get clarity and be like, wow, I really need to stand up to this person and say, you know what, I don't appreciate what you're saying about me. Please don't tell me anything about this if you don't have anything good to say. And whether they actually, do that or not is one thing, but you might decide it's important for you to actually tell them. Or maybe they just need help being more supportive. My family had no idea that they were making me feel so terrible. And I finally had to say, you know what, when you guys say this, it makes me feel like I'm an idiot nutcase and no one should believe me. And they were like, no, that's not how we meant it. And they backpedaled, and they've really tried harder to like not say things that hurt me so much, and they've become much more sensitive. It's not perfect, but I can at least see them trying. So that clarity and insight is like, what am I doing? What does this mean for me? If it's confusing, can I get some more insight? And then looking at how the message like fits with what's going on inside of you. Is this a chance for healing? Is it a chance for action? Is it a chance for me to understand myself better, or like bring back an orphaned part of me? Does anybody have any questions about this stage where you're diving deeper, trying to break down the nutrients in this message?
See, I'm not seeing any questions over in the chat. If anyone wants to raise your hand or put something in the chat, I think we might be good.
Great. Okay. We're now getting into stage 3, right? Using it for action. So this is what Spirit said to me about imitating other people. So there's a difference between learning from an inspirational role model and trying to replace yourself with somebody else. Pay attention to how your thoughts about others make you feel, and focus on the ones that make you feel great. So we're getting into that action stage where we're using the nutrients of the message to fuel our bodies or our brains to make some sort of change, right? Either to do something or to think differently. And I realized this was a big problem that I had in my years in the Christian church, was I really thought I was supposed to replace myself with Jesus. Like, stop being Robin and be Jesus instead. And that made me feel terrible about myself, because I'm like, wow, I guess I'm the terrible kid and Jesus is the good kid. We all have to act like Jesus or else Spirit won't love us. And so what Spirit said to me is, he's like, my spirit guide, he said, you got to look at other people and think, not so-and-so is so much better than I am. Why, I wish I were like them. Oh, my life would be better if I could just do such and such. You got to say, what is it that they're doing that would make me feel amazing about me? Wow, I'm so inspired by the way that such and such talks to Spirit every day, as though Spirit were just a regular person. I always feel kind of worried that Spirit's going to be mad at me. I'd really like to be free around Spirit, just like that person is. Or, oh, I saw this amazing tarot spread and I'm like, that's the tarot spread that I need to figure out what to do with my job. It's like, you got to take what you see other people do and then bring that into your own psyche to empower you, not to make you feel bad. Like, I've learned lessons from Mom, but I'm not supposed to be Mom while I implement the lessons I learned. So here's some suggestions for what you can do to create your changed life, to use the nutrients to actually like do things differently. So the number one is to get through your cognitive shield. Make sure you're working with your inner self. Practice, visualize, role play. This is really good for family members or friends who are not coming with you, is to have a mental conversation with them before you have the physical conversation with them. And at the end, I have some examples of this. Maybe I'll see if I can give you, but I started talking to my parents like in a meditation state in my brain, and it resulted in surprising changes in physical life. Start with having a different energy inside of you, and then look for changes to occur on the outside. So you might want to ask, what are some spiritual or personal connections I could make that would empower my new habits and actions? How am I speaking or acting differently? How will I harness support? You know, I'm going to be doing things differently based on this message from Spirit. Like, I feel like I need to stand up to my ex now about these kids. I feel really scared about that. How am I going to support myself in this new action? Do I need people to talk to me or to encourage me or hold me accountable? Do I need to ask Spirit to be with me and help me deal with the anxiety that's coming up so that my anxiety will drain away? Do I need to do a ritual to support this action? Do I need to plan it? Do I need a reminder in my phone? Do I need a Post-it note on the bathroom mirror? What kind of help do I need? Do I need to see a professional? Because now I've realized I have this child abuse from my childhood, and I need somebody to help me with that. What needs to be healed? And then this bottom stuff is super important. What patterns need to change? If you always respond to your parents by saying, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and then hiding away your true feelings, maybe that's a pattern that has to change, where you start getting more honest with those people. And then what beliefs are standing in my way? So like, Spirit is always trying to tell me not to be so afraid of my dad. But I had this belief that if I wasn't afraid of Dad, I was being disloyal. I'm like, no, Dad wanted me to be afraid. And if I'm going to be the bad daughter if I'm not afraid of Dad, because I'm not obeying him. And I had to let go of the belief that it's still my job now at age 49 to be a good daughter and obey my dad. There may be some parts of you that are very attached to these old patterns, and you really want to dig into them and be gentle with yourself and understand how you want to be different in order to pave the way for these new things that you want to do and that Spirit is guiding you towards. Does anybody have any questions about this? Creating your changed life. What do you do with the messages from Spirit?
I'm not seeing any over in chat.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to email me, I can send you a copy of some of these slides if anybody's interested, or you're welcome to take a screenshot.
And I will repost your email here in just a second.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this was a huge thing for me. We take in Spirit's messages, but we don't actually do anything about them. And it's just like eating. You're better off eating one meal and then really thoroughly digesting it, rather than always going back for more and more, because you just get overwhelmed by too much input if you're not processing it. So we're going to go on to the next stage. Oh, sorry, no, one more thing, which is your third house in your astrology chart, is the house of how do you process Spirit's messages, and then your location of your natal moon. This is the artist formerly known as Prince, by the way. And I want to mention, by the way, that I did an entire class on this on Valerie Lewis's Goddess with an Attitude YouTube channel. It's called Hearing Spirits Whispers. This is the URL for it, but if you go and search on YouTube, you should be able to find it, or we can try to post this in the chat when I'm done. So if you want to dive more into the astrology of using your 9th house and your 3rd house to understand how spirit communicates with you, then you should feel free to do that. Okay, but now we're going to go on. Yeah, now we're going to go on to letting go. So this is what spirit said to me about anger. Anger is useful for identifying what you really care about, want, and desire to put your passion into. Use it productively, not for tearing others down. Express it freely to spirit. They have thick skins and can take it. That's what my spirit guide said. He's like, I know I'm awesome. You don't have to build up my self-esteem by constantly praising me. You can tell me that you're really bleeping mad at me about such and such, and I can take that. He's like, that's when it gets good. This is when people get honest. And I mention this because a lot of times we hold on to things because we're really angry about them, but we don't want to be honest about being angry because we think anger is bad, and then things just fester. It's perfectly fine to lay into spirit, other people in your mind, write the angry letter, get the anger out, right? You don't want to tear other people down with it, but to express it, and that helps you figure out what you want to let go of. So this is the thing. Most of our psyches have a bunch of stuff that we just need to let go of, letting go of the waste. This is obviously the last digestive stage here. So those could be limiting beliefs or undermining habits. They could be conditioning, like leftover stuff from childhood, maybe their trauma or wounds. These last two, though, I think are super important because the first 4, we kind of all get that, hopefully, right? That there's beliefs like my belief that I had to obey my dad at age 49. That was a limiting belief. But these last 2 are really important, especially in this age when a lot of us are getting messages from spirit through things like YouTube videos or stuff like this, where there's an expert who's giving her opinion on things. And then a lot of us have friends in the metaphysical world who are giving us their opinion as well. And what that means is that unless you just got like the one sentence from spirit, which totally could happen, but unless you're in that situation, the message for you, right, the thing that spirit's really trying to help you with is likely to be buried in a lot of other opinions, pieces of expertise. When I put this thing together, I really tried to have something for everybody. And that means that some of what I'm saying here isn't where you are on your path, or it's just my experience, but it's not your experience, or it doesn't fit your gifts. So it's really important not to have that, oh my gosh, I've got to do everything Robin says. Well, this is how tarot cards are supposed to be read, so I've got to do it this way. Like, you've got to learn to let go of the expertise, which might be true or right or helpful, but it doesn't fit you. Or other people's opinions, which are really just what works for them, but they're not really what works for you. So spirit is often kind of nudging you to let go of this stuff, like poking you to release this. And so it's not just important to pay attention to what spirit is telling you you should do. And you can ask spirit for clarity on this. Please help me figure out what I should be letting go of. What should I be replacing? What do I not need anymore? Because otherwise you just end up with the spiritual equivalent of constipation, where you're taking in new stuff, but you're not letting go of the old stuff. So what you want is for spirit to kick out of your psyche, whatever it is that it's time to let go of, and replace that with a better way. What's the better way for me to be doing this? What belief do I have to release in order for me to stand up? Like, it's not safe to stand up to my ex. I got to release the belief that it's not safe, because I've got to figure out how it is going to be safe for me to stand up to him to get time with my kids. Does anybody have any questions about this idea of the need of letting go of the waste?
We've got a question that just popped up from Lisa, which isn't quite on this topic, but do you want to grab that one?
Yeah, why don't you tell me, and I'll mention it, whether I'm going to mention it now or later.
Okay. So she's asking, how do we discern between spirit talking to us, like via songs, TV, billboards, or if it's confirmation bias?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, let me finish this and I will get right back to that.
Okay. And then Alexis has her hand up.
Okay. All right. Well, let me say what I needed to say about this, because something occurred to me that what you're kicking out here, by the way, when it comes to, this is back to that question about what about the people who don't come with you. So you can let go of your attachment to these people's approval. And you may be able still to keep them in your life if it's just okay with you that they don't agree with you or that they're not supportive. But spirit may also nudge you that sometimes it's time to let go of relationships as well. And that requires a lot of discernment, obviously, and discretion. Like you don't want to just cut things off with people without really thinking about it. But remember that you don't have to cut off people in order to cut off their control over you, unless obviously you're in a situation where you feel physically unsafe. In that case, there's something different about that. But just to distinguish the nuance between your attachment to people's approval and your ability to actually spend time with them might not be quite the same thing. Okay, what's Alexis's question?
Alexis, you want to unmute yourself there? And Robin, just so you know, we have about 20 minutes left.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just want to ask, what was the diet called? Is it called a medieval diet, or what's the name of it?
It's called a medieval humor analysis. And if you email me, I will send you some links that show you how to do this for yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I want to mention, by the way, I'm not a professional dietitian. And if you're on a diet that a doctor has given you, you should think twice about changing it. But for me, I just have a lot of kind of like creakiness and fatigue and general pain. And changing my diet according to my humor analysis has made a really big difference. So I don't want to override any medical advice, but especially if you're experiencing sort of like vague and amorphous health problems that doctors are not really able to fix, it's something worth trying. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Nope, I think we're good.
So we are now on to the earworm example. Thank you to whoever it was who asked me about the earworm example. So this is an example from my life last week. Last week, I was on vacation with my family and we saw the musical on TV, the musical Hamilton. And after we saw the musical Hamilton, Spirit consistently started playing the songs in my brain all the time. And we're going to get to that question about distinguishing between signs from spirit and confirmation bias. So I woke up one morning and I had this song, Ain't Never Gonna Be President Now, in my head. And in the musical, this is a song that they sing after Hamilton comes clean about his adultery. He's committed adultery and he tells everybody about it so that people won't accuse him of financial misconduct as the Secretary of the Treasury. And it's kind of a mean song. Ain't never gonna be president now. Now they know about you. Now you'll never be president because you're this adulterer. And I was kind of surprised because normally Spirit doesn't sing mean songs in my ear. And so I took a moment and I was like, what's the message of this? What's the message of this song? And I heard a little voice that said, you think a lot about what you aren't. Maybe spend more time thinking about what you are. So the number one, this was the message from Spirit. Step one, the song in my mind. Step two, me asking for clarity was, what is this about? And that was the message, which was that I was too focused on what I wasn't. Well, I'm not teaching any more SAT. Well, my family relationship is more complicated than it used to be. Well, I'm not a scientist like my mom. Well, I've never won a national award, whatever it is. And I was like, okay. And then I said to Spirit, what should I be doing instead? And I said, I am going to focus on the skills that I do have. What am I good at? What can I do? Because Hamilton's really famous, even though it's true he never was president, but that doesn't diminish his legacy in, founding the country. And so I literally sat down. That was my action number 3. I made a list of the skills I do have. What am I good at? What do people consistently say that they appreciate about me? And I've really just stopped thinking so much about all the things I'm not. Because step 4, I released that old habit of thinking about what I didn't do. So this is the whole cycle, right? The message comes in, ain't never going to be president now. I didn't know what that meant. But then I asked for some clarity and I was like, okay, that's the message. I got to think more about what I am. And then I actually took some action and I'm like, well, what can I give to people? What do I do? And then I'm like, and I'm going to stop thinking. I'm going to release my old habit of constantly having on autopilot, like all the stuff that I'm not. Did that make sense as far as explaining how the earworm worked? What's the message in the earworm? Yeah. I will mention, by the way, that once I changed this, I started hearing the song, it must be nice to have Washington on your side, which is the song that they sing when they're trying to figure out why Hamilton is so successful. And I was like, what's the message about that? It must be nice to have Washington on your side. And Spirit said to me, it must be nice to have yourself on your side. You have to be your own biggest supporter. You have to be always the person who's always on your side, not cutting yourself down, not succeeding by criticizing yourself. You got to be always on your own side. So that's how the earworms work for me. So Lisa, you're asking a great question about how do we distinguish between Spirit's messages and confirmation bias. And I think it's interesting. You should ask yourself, why do I think I'm prone to confirmation bias, right? Because you might have some examples where you're like, no, actually that was confirmation bias. And Spirit might be helping you develop your discernment. So I would say if you feel like you consistently experience confirmation bias, then you can go back and make a list of some times that it was confirmation bias and some times that it was Spirit, and ask yourself, what's the difference? I personally find that I tend to worry about confirmation bias when Spirit is triggering my like limiting beliefs. Like if Spirit is really nice, I'm like, is this really you? Are you really there for my highest good? Because I somehow have this idea that being nice to myself is not the way to succeed, and I should succeed by being mean to myself. So you want to ask yourself, is Spirit pushing me to do something that seems like my old habit, my old way of doing things, something that's not good for me? That might be confirmation bias. Like a lot of times Spirit will say things to me that are like, well, you should just settle, you're not going to do that great anyway. And I'm like, are you really here for my highest good? Because they're trying to train me to always be like looking for more and not thinking that I need to settle for second best, because that's like an old habit for me. So really ask for some clarity. Where are Spirit trying to help me grow? And then when you get a sign or a synchronicity or a voice or whatever it is, ask, does this seem like it's in line with the direction that Spirit is helping me grow? Or does this seem like it's really just doubling down on what I've always been like? So those are some good questions to ask yourself. All right. But you can also try the subconscious jar exercise, which I'm just about to give you guys. Any other questions before I head on to that?
I think we're good.
Good. All right. So this is an exercise which can help you with your
Robin, real
confirmation
quick,
bias
sorry.
question.
Yeah, one more. It slid in right as I was saying, I think we're good. Does it matter if the messages are from Spirit or your own higher self? Sometimes I feel like we are just asking ourselves and receive answer from the self.
Right. So this is a really good question. I asked Spirit this once, and what my Spirit guide said to me was, there's not as big of a difference as people tend to think. So your higher self, it might be important for you personally to know the difference, but I don't think that the messages are like more valuable if they come from Spirit and less valuable if they come from your higher self. I personally tend to hear from both, and I can distinguish between the two of them after some practice. But I think in general, what you're really looking for is a source of guidance that's helping you grow in a way that keeps you moving forward, and that's positive. And there are times when Spirit has been like, I'm not talking to you, you've got to talk to your higher self. So sometimes Spirit trains us by using our higher selves not to be so dependent on Spirit or not to idolize Spirit. But if it is important to you, I would ask yourself why, and see if it has anything to do with doubting yourself or feeling dubious about your own higher self. Like dive into that and think, why does it matter to me whether it's Spirit or my higher self? Yeah, it's a good question. So I do these rituals every couple of weeks with Valerie for the Tarot Unicorns and Coffee New Moon. And I thought I would prepare this ritual for you guys, which actually gave me the idea for this talk back a year ago. It's called the subconscious jar. So what you do is you find a sacred container. That's right. My sacred container was a jar with the word pear jam on the top. Now I was planning to make a sigil and like tape it to the top of the jar, but then it occurred to me that pear jam was actually like what I was really hoping to achieve here, because pear is like Spirit and me are a pair. And then jam is like jam, like a party, right? So it's really like Spirit and me partying together. But anyway, the point is you can figure out whatever your sacred container is. So you have your sacred container, you cut 30 pieces of paper. You can do more or fewer depending on the time period, but I think a month is a good thing for this. So I cut 30 pieces of paper. I used old envelopes, so I was recycling. And then every night you write something that you got from Spirit that day, something you heard, something you saw, something you sensed, something you received, somebody sent you, or an intuition you had. It could be a sign, a dream, a quote, an image, a voice, an inspiration, a longing, a desire, an internet info, right? Like something that appeared in your YouTube feed, some experience you had, something that you were like, I think this is from spirit. I think this might be spirits nudging me. This just felt special, or it felt important, or it felt exhilarating. And after 30 days, you spread it out and you look for patterns. So, and you can make a whole ritual out of it if you want. You can put it on an altar, you can do all kinds of things. But after 30 days, you take the pieces of paper out, and I'll show you how I did this with mine, but you're looking for, what is it that spirit said to me? Like this one, this is great. Robin Poole is the perfect name for a water priestess. Spirit said that to me at one point. I was like, I never really even thought of that at all, right? Or yeah, I saw a boat that said Goddess Fantasy. That was the name on the back of the boat. I was like, Goddess Fantasy. I wonder why that's coming up. So what you're doing is you're trying to figure out, here I got 30 days of stuff that spirit said to me, nudges from my own intuition, higher self, the big tent version of spirit. What are the patterns that are keeping coming up? And then the trick is to make a plan to embrace those. How am I going to act on those patterns? How am I going to feel differently about myself, do things differently, talk differently, think differently? Be gentle. Some things might be like, wow, that's kind of out there. I wasn't expecting this. So I'll tell you what happened with me. Here's my example, right? This was my first. There was all kinds of stuff. There was like, here's an earworm, the season of the witch. You might know that. I think it's a Doors song. Must be the season of the witch. There's the boat. I had a client who said this reading amazed me. My husband said I should do a podcast. I had a book idea about making money with witchcraft. I don't even consider myself a witch, but it just popped into my head. I got sick and my herbal remedies worked. It took me 3 rounds of meditating on this, plus a couple of rounds of telling spirit that I was very uncomfortable and did not like seeing any of this stuff. Oh yeah, there were a lot of struggles. And I finally got it down to 2 categories: people asking for my content and this desire to channel my inner divine and feel powerful. And this was hard for me because I have a lot of childhood messages that my inner divine doesn't exist and that I should not be powerful. But I'm really working with spirit to think, how am I going to actually implement this? Does anybody have any questions on this ritual, how it works, what you could do with it?
I'm not seeing any in the chat right now. Anyone want to raise your hand or put anything in the chat?
And by the way, you could use an envelope, you can use a box, you can use a Ziploc baggie, whatever it is that is, meaningful to you.
Okay.
And, yeah,
good.
and so this might help you figure out what the pattern is with spirit's nudges and what is confirmation bias for you. Learn how to understand the clutter, capture what your subconscious is really longing for. My conscious mind said I should have a scientific career like mom. Apparently, my subconscious wants to channel my inner goddess and feel powerful. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of different. But I got to say, it does sound like a lot more fun than having a career as an astrophysicist, which mom has loved, but it hasn't been for me.
All right, we have a question.
Yeah.
What if you don't get a message one day? Do you skip it?
So you certainly can skip it. But my hunch is if you ask spirit, hey, I'm doing this subconscious jar message, I would like to get a message at least once a day. My guess is you'll see a lot more messages coming in.
And then could you go over those numbers again?
The numbers? The numbers about the 30 pieces of paper?
I am assuming. I'm not sure. That's just the question that's in there.
Yeah. So I decided a month was a good amount of time to track spirit's trends. So I cut 30 pieces of paper. And I missed a couple of nights. It's not like spirit's going to strike you dead if you miss a night or 2, right? It's not a big deal. But I went on vacation and I took it with me on vacation. This jar has been all over Oregon. Yeah, so 30 days. But you could also do just a week or 2 weeks. There's no reason why you have to do it 30 days. And of course, you can do it more than once. You could do it every month just to track what spirit has to say to you and see if there are any changes. Could be interesting. Right. With my last 5 minutes.
We look like Victoria has a question real quick.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I get like quite a few messages for
Yeah.
like a couple days, and then it like dries up. And I have noticed, which I wanted to address this before you got done tonight, but I've been having like continuous ear ringing, and I am an empath, so I feel everything from everyone, and so I have to shield myself, you know. But I have been asking Spirit for help, for guidance, and to show me like in dreams or messages or stuff like that. And ever since then, my ears have been ringing for like probably like 3 or 4 days now.
Wow.
So I asked one of my other friends, and she said that it was because we're empaths, and that we're beacons. So wanted to get your take on that.
Does the ear ringing bother you? Are you wanting it to go away?
No, it's, I mean, I'm aware of it, but it's just like a very low buzz. It doesn't keep me awake or anything like that. It just, I just know it's there.
Right. So I guess what I would say is I would definitely ask Spirit whether there's anything specific you need to know about the ear ringing. Sometimes Spirit gives us these indications to let us know when messages are coming in, but sometimes that can have to do with a message that you haven't digested yet, right? Or you got the message, but somehow you haven't acted on it, or you need more clarity, or maybe there's a message that you need to pass on to somebody if you get those types of messages. So ask Spirit to let you know, is this ear ringing a sign of something important? And if it is, then let me know what it is that I should do to act on it. You can also ask Spirit to, or your body itself, to dial down the ear ringing if it's bothering you. But offhand, I think I probably would need to talk to you a little bit more to get some sense of what might have caused it. As an empath, I will just let you know that it's true that empaths receive a lot of emotions from people, but there are definitely ways to dial down the emotions you receive or to let go of them so that they're not constantly bombarding you. So the ear ringing might also be a sign that you're kind of getting full and it's time to let go of some stuff so that things don't build up quite so much.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Letting go.
I definitely agree with that. Yes.
Very important to the bathroom. Spiritually go to the bathroom, everybody. Let go.
Awesome. So if anyone else has questions, I'm going to have you grab the email address from Robin so she can wrap up here, and then we can give you a few little housekeeping things.
Yeah. So I basically wrote a poem based on the Lenormand card reading. By the way, Nicole Sweet and I are teaching a class on Lenormand cards. And if you didn't know that you could write a poem based on Lenormand cards, here is one. But I told Spirit I wanted something for you guys to encourage you on your way. So this is it. You enter innocent, learn to take care of yourself, and leave on a journey. In the middle, confusion reveals it's not the outside messages that matter most. You release what you no longer need. At bottom, stability comes from loyal companions, and you are healed. And this is what I got from Spirit as far as how we think about the spiritual journey and working with Spirit. It's not the outer messages that matter most. It's what we do with them on the inside. How we change our lives, how we build the experience that we want, that matters most. And then there's my email and my website. And then if you want to follow me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, I'm at Spirit Said Style.